This is Joshua Factor, and today I'm going to be ranking all 29 MCU movies from my least favorite to my favorite. Let me know down in the comments below how you would rank these films, and just in general, how the MCU has impacted your life. And if you enjoy the MCU and film in general, then you're in the right place. So click subscribe so you can learn more about the film culture community that we're building here on this channel. But I could do this all day, but we're going to be going through them rather quickly as I could. So 29, we have Spider-Man Far From Home, one that I once loved dearly, that just ends up lacking with the humor that just starts to fail as we go. And as much as Mysterio is a great villain, Tony handing off the glasses to a teenager who is incompetent to really handle good glasses just ends up as a big plot hole that I'm not a fan of the movie anymore. And coming in 28, we have Iron Man 2. One of the most lackluster films that just feels like it has too many scripts and ideas put together. And while it does have the great Iron Man moments that I do love as an Iron Man film, I'm just not into this one all too much. And number 27, we have Thor: The Dark World. One that's a lot more bland. The color choices just doesn't blend too well. And it has one of the most forgettable villains, that's the Dark Elf Malekith. And coming in number 26, we have Age of Ultron, the second Avengers film that just handles everything way too seriously, and while it has so much to offer the film, it ends up being incompetent and not necessarily one of the greater well-balanced films throughout the Avengers film. And coming in number 25, Black Widow, my least favorite Phase 4 film, just in the way that it's often forgettable. And while I was on board to get a solo Black Widow film, it just is not handled well, being the only spy thriller film that has so many moments that, even as much as a prequel film isn't safe of believing that they're gonna die, it goes to the extreme of crazy situations where they should be dying or getting really injured, and they just get up like nothing happens, and it does that way too often. And the Taskmaster is also a forgettable villain as well, as much as I don't mind the change that they've done with her. And coming in number 24, we have Thor Love and Thunder, one that just does not land well with the imbalance of humor, always trying to outbeat the last joke and always feeling kind of bland, and something we've seen before with the MCU. And while the cinematography in the second half and the final battle is something to write home about, overall, this film just does not feel balanced all throughout. And coming in number 23, we have ShangChi, a film that is very unique in the fun nature of something different, getting the Asian culture to this film, but ultimately it just feels, again, imbalanced by all the humor that's trying to compile and some of the contrivances that just drive this film home just to make the heroes win. And coming in number 22, we have Thor Ragnarok. Now, once I love this as well, but overall, the jokes just overdo themselves, and I don't find them as humorous anymore. And while Thor is such a great arc, it feels like there's a lot missing of what you could do with the Hulk character, with Planet Hulk arc type of thing, or just in general, what they're doing, and what the arc you get with Thor losing his eye is easily undone within the very next Infinity War film. And coming in number 21, we have the Incredible Hulk. Now, while I do enjoy this a bit more than others, it ultimately ends up being somewhat forgettable. It's in the experimental phase of Phase 1 of the MCU, and ultimately it just feels left out at times, and not one of the greatest Hulk films out there. Coming in 20, we have Multiverse of Madness, a film that just tries to write home what is all going forward, but feels very scaled down. And even Thor: The Dark World final battle feels like more of a Multiverse of Madness, going through the different realms, through different portals, than this one that just feels very grounded once they land on where they're at. And does not take the potential to its fullest. And coming in number 19, we have Captain America: The First Avenger. Well, this does have a great first sequence and a great origin story to Captain America. It ultimately feels stale as it drives home, montages through war, and the Red Skull here doesn't have a huge role that really writes home his character to it. And coming in number 18, we have Ant-Man. Just a fun classic movie that is just fun to laugh at. It is funny for what it is, just with the writing it's going for, and it doesn't have the high stakes, and just the way it goes about is just entertaining just as an MCU film, even if it feels different. And coming in number 17, we have Avengers Endgame. Now this is a difficult one for me to rank, just because I'm frustrated by the strong contrivances, just the rat being the source of the answers that turns on the time machine, and the van still working after 5 years, and so many other things, and some humor that's thrown in there that just feels very random and just made for laughs, that just doesn't live up to rewatches over and over. And while the last hour is one of the greatest, and there's so many great Easter eggs of lines in compiling where the MCU came to an end in the Infinity Saga, ultimately this is a great end, and I almost wish that it ended that here, but it just isn't one of the greatest. 16, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, this is just a fun semi-origin story to Tom Holland's story, just highly enjoyable. What we're getting with the Vulture as one of the greatest twists into the MCU as the villain, and Michael Keaton being a great performance with that. Tom Holland just being so great in what he's doing, and while it doesn't always take itself seriously, it feels a little imbalanced with the humor. Overall, it lands well in the enjoyable factor. And coming in number 15, we have Doctor Strange, a fun mystical arts film that I just wish I would have even been able to enjoy it that much more, because I love the Doctor Strange character, but it again offers another semi-bland villain that just doesn't offer all too much that's memorable. And while the mind-twisting elements are something very unique to this film, it ultimately just lacks a little bit in some parts in the pacing. And coming in number 14, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. That's just really enjoyable, and another Ant-Man film that drives up the stakes, builds up the antics, that I just highly enjoy this film. It's one of the more watchable films, and the one that I was most looking forward to rewatching it as I was going through this ranking. And overall, it delivers on many fronts, and even though the Ghost isn't the greatest MCU villain, she does deliver on her own means. And overall, while some things aren't needed to be taken so seriously, it was a nice cool down type of movie that doesn't have such high stakes. And coming in number 13, we have Captain America and the Winter Soldier, a film that I just really enjoyed for the great technical elements, but overall really never sticked well with me all throughout. Just with it feels like very mellow all throughout, where it's always keeping up the pace, but it never captivates me in a high moment. And next up, we have Iron Man 3. Now, this one was a strong Iron Man film, as I really enjoyed a character building up a great end that does sort of get reversed within the next film. But as this film stands on its own especially, I just highly enjoy this, even as we get a fake out of the Mandarin. It's sort of redeemed in ShangChi that overall, this still creates a great Iron Man environment that makes me love the character that much more. Next up, we have Captain Marvel, enjoyable film that I actually really enjoyed for what they were going for. Captain Marvel having Brie Larson as her role, I actually do like her performance, and while she is very mellow and her true character is held back because of the mind bending and twisting her mind where she's not her true self, I still really enjoy what we're getting through there. And also, so many of the twists with the Skrulls involved just makes Ben Mendelsohn have that much greater of a performance and makes sense for what all we're going for. And this is another entertaining film that just creates another powerful hero to the MCU. And coming in number 10, an Iron Man the first film that just really delivers. And while it does have a little bit of setbacks with the Playboy instance in the beginning that feels out of place in the MCU, and just a little bit of the dragging of the beginning, overall, this film really takes flight to the skies with all that they're going with in the adventure of Iron Man, making me love this character before the MCU really even began to start. And coming in number 9, we have Eternals, one of my favorite of Phase 4, that's just creating this epic sci-fi film that's sort of poetic and has this great cast of characters. And while we don't get so much time spent with each individual one, there's a good balance all spread throughout that I can enjoy just enough and really enjoy what the nature of this sci-fi film is that I get really attached to because it's so different in its nature. And coming in number 8, we have Thor, one I didn't like so much earlier, but went up on the rewatch as this is such a great culturalized film, just with the way you get the fish out of water film on space on Earth, and the very Shakespearean story back on Asgard, and just the balance between the two makes it feel like it may be a little bit too separate, but it's very fitting in the nature of how it goes about telling its story appropriately to the cultures involved, and that's what makes it just really enjoy and put me this high. And coming in number 7, we have Black Panther, another film that explores culture in such a strong way in Africa, in this hidden land that's cut off from the rest of the earth until the end, that I just highly enjoy for the nature that you're exploring Black Panther and his community. Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, just being such a great performance on the big screen, and just highly enjoying what we all have to offer with how this culture interacts, the world building that it explores through it. And while the CGI is a little bit iffy near that final battle, we get another great villain that is Killmonger. And coming in number 6, we have Captain America Civil War. We always get the debate of who is better, Team Cap or Team Iron Man. Well, I prefer Team Iron Man as the character. I do kind of side with Cap as well, but overall I just highly enjoy just the war you get. And while there's a little bit of nitpicking on what you can do, of why certain heroes decided what team they were on when they didn't show they had a strong preference fleshed out on the film, overall it's still a fun action-packed battle that overall still is so unique and really divided the Avengers to create such a great movie that was Infinity War. But coming in at number 5, we have Spiderman No Way Home, one that just still lives up since its release, and I highly enjoy getting Tom Holland with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, getting all 3 Spider-Man, and the return of older Spider-Man villains just making a big screen appearance is just really enjoyable. But ultimately, the first hour can be a bit of a drag as you're waiting for the new Spider-Man. But overall, I still highly enjoy what we do get from this film, as it is a lengthier film that you do get enough of what you need to, that it feels appropriately written and not just shoved fan service in your face. And coming in at number 4, we have Guardians of the Galaxy, probably the biggest surprise of the nature of the MCU, being ambitious in where they're going with adding another team that's not the Guardians, going deeper into their cosmic realm outside of Thor, and just building this team that's so rich in the themes of family and community, and the way they're not always on the same terms, and the differences between their cultures being brought up, and how they come together, and what this ends up being. It brings a good bit of laughs and just a lot of fun. And coming in our top 3, we have Avengers. Really enjoyable, still living up to this day. And fun fact, in 8th grade, I did play the Avengers theme for a band concert, which is what introduced me into the MCU. So I do have a strong bias for this film, but overall it's been going up and down, and it's still at my number 3 spot, as I highly enjoy the battle that we ultimately get, even if we do get some outdated costumes that don't completely live up to today's standard. We do get a fun action-packed film with great villain as Loki. Coming number 2, we have Avengers Infinity War, the epic battle creating such a great villain as Thanos, just being able to see his point of view, being so rich and deep within the meditation of his reasons, and so well crafted, being a huge film that balances all of these different sides, even better than Avengers Endgame in my personal preference, that just has such high stakes and is one of the bigger films where the villain actually wins in the end. But that leaves at number 1, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the sequel of the Guardians of the Galaxy that brings so much more to the themes of family, this time having Ego, Star-Lord's dad, be the ultimate villain with a strange twist that brings so much stakes and so much strong moments within the film, exploring so much deeper into these heroes that you're building in a galaxy, and introducing Mantis and Ego, and just creating one of the saddest deaths, that is Yondu, making this one of my favorite movies of all time, and not just my favorite movie of the MCU. So that's just my ranking of all the 29 movies of the MCU released thus far. Let me know down in the comments below how you would rank these films from least favorite to favorite. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to join the film culture community where we learn more about film and culture. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.